You don't struggle with money because you're bad at math. You struggle because you're human. And humans are emotional. Not rational. Not consistent. Not disciplined by default. Emotional. That's the part nobody teaches you. You can understand percentages. You can understand interest rates. You can understand investing. And still sabotage your own wealth. Because money is not about intelligence. It is about behavior. And behavior is psychological. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't have a money problem. They have an identity problem. They earn more, but spend more. They get a raise and upgrade their lifestyle immediately. They promise to save, but find a reason not to. They say they want freedom, but choose comfort. They say they want wealth, but fear responsibility. And they don't even realize they're doing it. Let's talk about someone you know. The lottery winner. Millions overnight. Freedom overnight. Security overnight. And yet, studies show a shocking pattern. A large percentage of lottery winners lose everything within a few years. Not because they didn't have money, but because they didn't have the psychology to hold it. Money amplified who they already were. Spenders became bigger spenders. Generous without boundaries became exploited. Insecure became reckless. Money didn't change them. It revealed them. Now let's talk about the opposite. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, lives in the same house he bought in 1958, drives modestly, avoids flashy lifestyle inflation, invests patiently, waits longer than most people can emotionally tolerate. Why? Because wealth for him is not about excitement. It's about behavior, discipline, emotional control, time horizon. Here's the difference between those two examples. Sudden money without discipline collapses. Slow money with discipline compounds. And compounding is boring. That's the problem. Modern culture rewards excitement. Wealth rewards restraint. Modern culture rewards speed. Wealth rewards patience. Modern culture rewards visibility. Wealth rewards quiet structure. That tension destroys people financially. Let's look at 2008. The financial crisis. Markets crashed. Fear exploded. People panicked. Sold at the bottom. Locked in losses. Emotion made decisions. But some did something different. They stayed calm. They evaluated fundamentals. They invested when everyone else was afraid. Those people multiplied their wealth in the recovery. Same market. Same information. Different psychology. And that's the theme of this audiobook. Money does not respond to intelligence alone. It responds to emotional discipline. You don't lose money because you lack knowledge. You lose money because you lack control. Control over fear. Control over greed. Control over comparison. Control over ego. Let me say something that might challenge you. You are not broke because of the economy. You are not broke because of your salary. You are not broke because life is expensive. You are broke, or financially stuck, because of patterns. Spending patterns. Thinking patterns. Emotional patterns. And patterns can be changed. But first, they must be exposed. Let's talk about tech founders. The ones who built billion-dollar companies. They are not reckless gamblers. They are calculated risk-takers. There's a difference. Reckless risk is emotional. Calculated risk is structural. They understand something most people don't. Volatility is temporary. Conviction is long-term. Most people panic in volatility. Wealth builders position in volatility. That difference is psychological. Now here's the deeper layer. Money triggers identity. If you grew up hearing, rich people are greedy. Money changes people. Don't aim too high. Be realistic. Those phrases didn't disappear. They became internal scripts. You might consciously say you want wealth, but unconsciously fear becoming one of those people. So you cap yourself. You delay investing. You undercharge. You avoid visibility. Not because you lack skill. Because you lack psychological alignment. Money amplifies identity. If your identity is unstable, money destabilizes you. If your identity is disciplined, money accelerates you. This audiobook is not about stock tips. It's not about 10 ways to get rich. It's not about hype. It's about the invisible architecture behind your financial life. The beliefs you inherited. The fears you suppress. The impulses you justify. The comfort zones you defend. Because here's the brutal truth. Wealth is not built by income alone. It's built by who you become. There are people earning 6 figures who are broke. There are people earning modest salaries who are quietly building wealth. Why? Behavior. Let me give you one simple example. Lifestyle inflation. You earn more. Instead of increasing assets, you increase expenses. Better car. Better apartment, better clothes, better status, and suddenly your new income feels small again. Not because it is small, because your identity expanded faster than your discipline. Income increased, behavior didn't, so wealth didn't, and you blame the system. But the system isn't emotional. You are. This is not an attack. It's awareness. And awareness is power. Over the next 2 hours, we are going to dismantle the myths you've absorbed about money. We are going to expose why you spend when stressed, why you avoid investing, why you fear losing more than you desire gaining. Why urgency destroys portfolios. Why comparison bankrupts discipline. Why comfort keeps you average. And why wealth is more about temperament than talent. You will not leave this audiobook with motivation. You will leave with clarity. Clarity about your habits, your fears, your patterns, and the identity you must build to hold wealth. Here's the foundation we begin with. Money is not about math. Money is about behavior. And behavior is psychology. If you fix the psychology, the math becomes easy. If you ignore the psychology, no amount of math will save you. So before we talk about earning more, before we talk about investing better, before we talk about building assets, we have to talk about you, your money script, your emotional triggers, your unconscious sabotage. Because wealth is not something you chase. It's something you align with. And alignment starts with awareness. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Money Script You Didn't Choose. Before you ever earned your first dollar, before you opened your first bank account, before you understood taxes, investing, or savings, you already had a money belief. You just didn't know it. One sat you down and said, "This is your financial identity." It formed quietly, through observation, through repetition, through emotion, through your environment. Money was not taught to you logically. It was absorbed psychologically. Think back. How did your family talk about money? Was it always tight? Was it always never enough? Did arguments happen around bills? Did stress rise at the end of the month? Did you hear things like, "Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are different. We're not that kind of family." Or maybe the opposite. Maybe money was spent freely. Status was important. Appearances mattered. The newest thing was necessary. Upgrading was automatic. Either way, you inherited a script. And here's the problem. You're still running it. Most people believe their financial decisions are rational. They're not. They are emotional reactions guided by childhood programming. If money caused stress in your home, you may unconsciously avoid looking at your bank account. If money caused conflict, you may overspend to avoid feeling restricted. If wealth was framed as arrogant or greedy, you may subconsciously resist becoming financially powerful. You don't sabotage wealth intentionally. You sabotage it to remain psychologically consistent. Let me explain something powerful. The human brain values identity more than income. If earning more threatens your identity, you will slow yourself down. If saving makes you feel deprived, because deprivation is familiar, you will sabotage your savings. If investing feels risky because your family equated money with fear, you will stay safe. And safe rarely builds wealth. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Financial trauma. It doesn't require extreme poverty. It doesn't require bankruptcy. It can be subtle. Watching parents argue. Feeling embarrassed at school. Hearing stress in someone's voice when bills arrived. Seeing fear attached to money repeatedly. Your brain connected money to emotion, not math. Emotion. Now fast forward to adulthood. You get paid. You feel relief. You spend. You feel reward. You save. You feel restriction. You invest. You feel anxiety. Notice something. Every financial action has an emotional signature. And if you don't understand the emotion, you cannot control the behavior. Now let's ground this in reality. Look at lottery winners. Millions overnight. Freedom overnight. Security overnight. And yet, a shocking percentage lose everything within a few years. Not because they lacked opportunity. Not because they didn't have money. Because their script didn't change. If someone grows up believing money should be enjoyed immediately, they enjoy it immediately. If someone believes money proves my worth, they spend it to display worth. If someone believes money comes and goes, it goes. Money amplified who they already were. It didn't rewrite them. Now contrast that with families who build generational wealth. They don't just pass down assets. They pass down behavior. Delayed gratification. Long-term thinking. Asset allocation. Risk management. Children in those environments don't just inherit money. They inherit discipline. And discipline outperforms income every time. Let's ask a difficult question. When you receive money, do you feel calm? Or do you feel pressure to move it? Pressure to spend. Pressure to upgrade. Pressure to reward yourself. Pressure to enjoy it before it disappears. That pressure is not financial. It's psychological. Your nervous system reacts to money. Money activates the same emotional circuits as status, safety, and survival. That's why someone making $50,000 can feel secure, and someone making $500,000 can feel anxious. Income does not equal safety. Psychology does. Now here's something powerful. Most people think wealth is about opportunity. It's not. It's about emotional stability. If your emotional state fluctuates easily, your financial decisions will fluctuate too. You'll invest high. Sell low. Spend impulsively. Avoid budgeting. Ignore long-term planning. Not because you're unintelligent, because your script is running. And scripts run automatically until questioned. Let's question yours. Do you believe money is scarce? Do you believe wealth is for other people? Do you believe you must struggle to earn? Do you believe money changes people for the worse? Do you believe saving is painful? Do you believe investing is gambling? Where did those beliefs come from? Most of them were inherited, not chosen. And here's the hard truth. If you don't rewrite your money script, no strategy will save you. You can read finance books. You can learn investing principles. You can increase income. But if your script says, "I'm not the kind of person who builds wealth," you will unconsciously return to baseline. This is called financial homeostasis. You earn more. You find a way to spend more. You get ahead. You find a way to reset. You promise discipline. You justify exceptions. Because your identity pulls you back. And identity is stronger than logic. That's why two people with the same salary live completely different financial lives. One builds assets quietly. The other upgrades lifestyle loudly. Same math. Different psychology. Now here's the shift. You cannot build wealth with a poverty identity. You cannot build abundance with fear. You cannot build assets while chasing validation. Wealth requires a new internal narrative. Not, "I hope I don't lose this," but, "I know how to manage this." Not, "I should enjoy this before it disappears," but, "I will position this for growth." Not, "I deserve to show this off," but, "I deserve long-term freedom." Freedom is delayed gratification. Freedom is structure. Freedom is restraint. And restraint is uncomfortable if you were never taught it. But discomfort is where scripts break. Let's end this chapter with something direct. You are not where you are financially by accident. You are here because of patterns. Patterns built from beliefs. Beliefs built from exposure. Exposure built from environment. Environment built your script. The good news. Scripts can be rewritten. But rewriting requires awareness. You must see the pattern before you can break it. So here's your assignment before we move on. Notice your reactions this week. When you spend. When you save. When you think about investing. When you see someone wealthier than you. When you feel pressure to upgrade. Don't judge it. Observe it. Because observation creates distance. And distance creates control. In the next chapter, we're going to confront something most people misunderstand completely. Income. And why earning more does not mean building wealth. Because if you think the answer to financial struggle is just make more money, you're about to discover something that changes everything. Chapter 2. Income is not wealth. One of the most dangerous financial beliefs in modern society is this: if I just earn more, everything will be fine. It sounds logical. It feels motivating. It seems responsible. And it is incomplete. Income is not wealth. Income is movement. Wealth is position. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. Income is loud. Wealth is quiet. You can have a high income and be financially fragile. You can have a moderate income and be financially stable. Let's confront something uncomfortable. There are people earning 6 figures who are one paycheck away from stress. There are executives with luxury cars who cannot miss 3 months of work. There are entrepreneurs with impressive revenue who have no reserves. There are influencers with status who have no assets. Why? Because income without structure becomes consumption. And consumption does not build wealth. It builds appearance. Let's define something clearly. Income is active. Wealth is accumulated. If you stop working tomorrow and your lifestyle collapses, you are income dependent. If you stop working tomorrow and your assets support you, you are wealth positioned. That difference is everything. Now let's talk about lifestyle inflation. You get a raise. Your brain celebrates. You feel relief. You feel validated. And within weeks, your expenses expand. Better apartment. Better car. Better restaurants. Better subscriptions. Better vacations. It feels justified. You worked hard. You deserve it. But here's the hidden psychology. Your identity expands with income. And when identity expands faster than discipline, wealth disappears. This is why some people earn more every year, yet feel no wealthier. Because their lifestyle grows at the same speed as their income. Income increases. Savings remain stagnant. Investments stay inconsistent. Assets remain minimal. But appearance improves. The trap is subtle. You think you're progressing because your lifestyle upgraded. But wealth is not measured by lifestyle. It's measured by ownership. Ownership of assets. Ownership of investments. Ownership of systems that pay you. Let's use a real example. Look at professional athletes. Many earn tens of millions during their careers. And yet, a significant percentage face financial collapse within a few years of retirement. Why? They had income. They didn't build wealth behavior. Spending matched earning. Status matched contracts. Lifestyle expanded instantly. When earning stopped, structure was missing. Income ended. Expenses didn't. Now contrast that with someone like Warren Buffett, one of the richest investors in history. He still lives in the same house he purchased decades ago. He avoided lifestyle inflation. He focused on capital preservation and compounding. For him, wealth was never about proving income. It was about protecting the gap. Because wealth is built in the gap. The gap between what you earn and what you consume. And that gap is psychological. Because consumption feels good. Investing feels delayed. Upgrading feels exciting. Saving feels boring. And boredom is where wealth is built. Let's go deeper. Why does earning more feel like the solution? Because it feels powerful. It feels like control. It feels like momentum. But income is external validation. Wealth is internal discipline. One is seen. The other is structured quietly. There's something else happening psychologically. When income rises, ego rises. You feel more capable, more accomplished, more deserving. And ego wants expression. Expression often looks like spending. Better clothes. Better house. Better car. Better visibility. Because ego wants confirmation. But wealth requires restraint. And restraint threatens ego. This is where people collapse financially. They confuse income growth with financial maturity. But maturity is not about earning. It's about allocation. How do you allocate what you earn? Do you increase assets? Or do you increase liabilities? A car upgrade feels like success. An investment account feels invisible. One gives social validation. The other builds quiet power. Most people choose validation because humans are social creatures. But wealth is not social. It's structural. Let's talk about another example: the 2008 financial crisis. Before the crash, many people had high incomes, stable careers, comfortable lifestyles. Banks were lending aggressively. Real estate prices were soaring. Confidence was high. Then the market collapsed. Bonuses disappeared. Jobs were cut. Housing values crashed. People who relied solely on income felt exposed. Those who had built reserves, diversified assets, and avoided over-leverage survived, and in many cases, positioned themselves to grow even stronger during the recovery. Same economy, different structure. Income can disappear. Assets compound. Income can fluctuate. Investments grow with time. Income depends on effort. Wealth depends on structure. Now here's a harder truth. Sometimes people don't want wealth. They want the feeling of wealth, the image, the appearance, the validation. And that's why income is seductive. It allows visible upgrades. Wealth often requires invisible discipline. You might drive a modest car. Live below your means. Invest consistently. Say no to impulse. And no one applauds you. There is no applause for delayed gratification. But compounding does not care about applause. Compounding rewards consistency. And consistency is psychological. Let me say something directly. If you cannot manage $50,000 responsibly, you will not manage $500,000 responsibly. Scale does not fix behavior. It amplifies it. If you overspend at one level, you will overspend at a higher level. If you avoid investing now, you will avoid investing later. If you chase status now, you will chase bigger status later. Money magnifies identity. It does not repair it. Now let's talk about financial security. Most people define security as earning enough. That's incomplete. Security is not earning more. Security is needing less. That statement alone changes perspective. If your lifestyle requires constant high income to sustain, you are fragile. If your lifestyle requires moderate income and your assets support you, you are stable. Fragility is psychological pressure. Stability is optionality. Optionality means you can say no. You can leave. You can pivot. You can wait. You can invest long-term. Income gives you options temporarily. Wealth gives you options permanently. And permanent options are freedom. Freedom is not flashy. Freedom is quiet. Freedom is not upgrading every year. Freedom is not needing to upgrade. Let's anchor this chapter with something clear. Income is a tool. Wealth is the result of how you use it. If you treat income as something to consume, it disappears. If you treat income as capital to deploy, it compounds. The difference is mindset. And mindset drives allocation. Before we move forward, Ask yourself something honestly. If your income doubled tomorrow, would your investments double? Or would your lifestyle? The answer reveals your psychology. In the next chapter, we go deeper. We're going to expose the emotional drivers behind spending: stress, reward, comparison, dopamine. Because until you understand why you spend, you will never fully control how you build wealth. And wealth is not built accidentally. It is built deliberately. Chapter 3: The Emotional Drivers of Spending. Most people believe they spend money because they need something. Very rarely is that true. They spend because they feel something, and money becomes the fastest way to change that feeling. Spending is emotional regulation disguised as consumption. You don't buy the shoes. You buy the feeling. You don't upgrade the car. You upgrade the identity. You don't order the expensive dinner. You order relief. Let's dismantle something simple. If spending were purely logical, no one would carry high-interest debt for temporary pleasure. No one would impulse buy things they don't use. No one would regret purchases within 48 hours. Yet it happens every day. Because emotion overrides logic. And emotion is immediate. Wealth requires delay. There's tension between those two forces. Immediate emotional relief versus delayed financial freedom. Most people choose relief. Let's examine the most common emotional spending triggers. 1. Stress spending. Stress activates survival mode. When you're stressed, your brain seeks comfort. Comfort can come from food, entertainment, or spending. Buying something releases dopamine. Dopamine signals reward. Reward temporarily reduces stress. So your brain learns something dangerous. Spending reduces discomfort. And now money becomes therapy. Long day at work. Order something. Feeling overlooked. Upgrade something. Feeling stuck. Buy something. The purchase isn't about the object. It's about altering your internal state. We saw this clearly during global lockdown periods. When uncertainty was high and stress levels surged, online shopping spiked dramatically. Not because needs increased, but because anxiety did. Packages became emotional relief. But here's the hidden cost. You reduce short-term stress and increase long-term financial pressure. You calm today and complicate tomorrow. That's emotional debt. And emotional debt compounds just like financial debt. 2. Reward spending. I worked hard. I deserve this. This is my treat. There's nothing wrong with reward. But here's the psychological trap. If reward becomes your primary form of celebration, spending becomes automatic after effort. Work hard, spend. Achieve something, upgrade. Get paid, indulge. Your brain links achievement with consumption. But wealthy individuals often link achievement with allocation. Work hard, invest. Achieve something, increase assets. Get paid, deploy strategically. different emotional pairing, different financial outcome. Look at tech founders in their early years. Many reinvested profits back into growth rather than upgrading their lifestyle immediately, while others, after their first big payout, scaled their lifestyle instead of their assets. Same success. Different psychological response. 3. Comparison spending. This one is silent but powerful. Social media has amplified it. You see someone traveling. You see someone upgrading. You see someone winning publicly. Your brain registers threat. Not consciously, but subconsciously. Status matters to humans, and spending becomes a tool to maintain perceived status. You don't want to feel behind. You don't want to feel average. You don't want to feel excluded. So you spend to restore emotional balance. During housing booms, this becomes obvious. In the mid-2000s housing surge, people stretched finances to keep up with rising property standards. Bigger homes. More upgrades. Riskier mortgages. Not always because they needed them, because they didn't want to feel behind. Then the 2008 crash revealed the fragility. Comparison is expensive. If your spending is driven by comparison, your wealth will always lag behind your insecurity. The wealthy understand something important. Comparison destroys capital. Because capital requires focus. Comparison requires distraction. 4. Dopamine spending. Dopamine is anticipation, not fulfillment. Scrolling online. Adding to cart. Imagining ownership. The anticipation often feels better than the product itself. That's why impulse purchases feel powerful before checkout, and flat afterward. The emotional spike fades, but the financial effect remains. Modern commerce is engineered around dopamine, limited offers, countdown timers, flash sales, urgency triggers. These are not pricing strategies. They are psychological triggers. And markets operate the same way. Crypto bull runs. Meme stock surges. Speculative manias. When Bitcoin surged to record highs, millions entered not because they studied fundamentals, but because everyone else was winning. Dopamine. Excitement. Fear of missing out. And when volatility hit, panic. Same emotion, different direction. Wealth requires awareness of your triggers, because dopamine is temporary. Compounding is permanent. Let's talk about something deeper. Why do some people overspend even when they know better? Because money is tied to identity. If someone grew up feeling invisible, spending may become a way to feel seen. If someone felt restricted, spending may feel like freedom. If someone felt powerless, spending may feel like control. It's rarely about the item. It's about the internal narrative. Now let's bring in a clear real-world example. Look at stimulus check periods. When governments distributed unexpected financial support, behavior split instantly. Some invested. Some paid down debt. Some saved. Many spent impulsively. Same money. Different psychology. Those who had discipline saw opportunity. Those who were emotionally reactive saw consumption. The difference wasn't income. It was impulse control. Now let's confront something honest. Have you ever purchased something? Not because you needed it, but because you were trying to change how you felt? That's human. But repeated patterns become identity. If every uncomfortable emotion leads to spending, your wealth will leak quietly. Because discomfort is constant. There will always be stress. There will always be comparison. There will always be desire. The question is, do you let emotion dictate allocation? Or do you let structure override impulse? Here's something powerful. Wealthy individuals are not emotionless. They feel the same impulses. They simply delay response. They create friction. Wait 24 hours. Review the necessity. Assess the long-term impact. Small friction protects capital. Impulse erodes it. Let's introduce a powerful phrase. Impulse spends. Discipline allocates. Allocation builds assets. Spending builds lifestyle. Lifestyle can be expensive. Assets can be powerful. Now imagine something. Every time you feel stressed, instead of buying something, you transfer that money into an investment account. Instead of consumption easing stress, you built compounding. Over years, that behavioral shift changes trajectory completely. Not because you earned more, because you reacted differently. Let's address one more emotional trigger. Fear of missing out. FOMO drives terrible financial decisions. Crypto hype. Stock bubbles. Housing surges. Everyone buying. Everyone celebrating. Everyone appearing to win. Emotion rises. You feel behind. You invest without research. You panic when volatility hits. You sell at a loss. History repeats this cycle constantly. .com bubble. Housing bubble. Speculative crazes. Same pattern. Different decade. Emotion overrides discipline. Discipline outperforms emotion long-term. Now here's the deeper layer. You don't eliminate emotional triggers. You manage them. Wealth is emotional management at scale. Because markets fluctuate. Income fluctuates. Life fluctuates. If your internal state fluctuates with it, your capital fluctuates too. But if your internal state is steady, you act strategically. Let's end this chapter with something direct. You're not poor because of math. You are financially inconsistent because of emotion. And emotion is trainable. Awareness creates space. Space creates control. Control creates allocation. Allocation creates wealth. In the next chapter, we confront something uncomfortable. The comfort zone of being broke. Because sometimes, it's not that people can't build wealth. It's that they are unconsciously attached to financial struggle. And that attachment is psychological. Chapter 4: The Comfort Zone of Being Broke. Nobody wakes up and says, "I choose financial struggle." But many people unconsciously protect it. That sounds extreme. But stay with me. Financial struggle can feel familiar. And familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. If you grew up in scarcity, you understand scarcity. You know how to survive it. You know how to complain about it. You know how to justify it. You know how to live inside it. Wealth, on the other hand, can feel unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels dangerous. Let's examine something quietly powerful. If you've always identified as the one who struggles, the one who figures things out last minute, the one who gets by, then financial discipline threatens that identity, because wealth requires transformation, and transformation requires letting go of who you've been. That's uncomfortable. It's easier to upgrade income than to upgrade identity. And here's the brutal truth. Some people sabotage wealth because struggle gives them emotional security. Struggle can provide sympathy, excuses, belonging, lower expectations. If you are broke, people expect less from you. If you are wealthy, people expect responsibility, visibility, leadership, control. Wealth removes excuses. And some people are more attached to their excuses than to their potential. Let's talk about responsibility. More money means more decisions. More decisions mean more accountability. More accountability means fewer places to hide. When you have nothing, you can blame the system. When you have resources, you must manage them. Management requires discipline. Discipline requires maturity. Maturity is uncomfortable. This is why some people subconsciously remain in financial chaos. Chaos allows emotional intensity. Wealth requires calm. Chaos feels dramatic. Wealth feels quiet. Many people mistake drama for meaning. They feel alive when money is unstable. They feel adrenaline when bills are tight. They feel intensity when finances are uncertain. It's exhausting, but it's familiar. Wealth is boring by comparison. Consistent saving. Consistent investing. Consistent allocation. No adrenaline. No dramatic swings. Just discipline. And discipline does not provide emotional excitement. That's why people sabotage it. Now let's introduce something important. Financial identity attachment. If your identity is built around being the underdog, becoming wealthy disrupts that narrative. If your identity is built around just getting by, building assets challenges that story. If your identity is built around, "I'm not good with money," discipline feels unnatural. Your brain protects identity, even if that identity limits you, because identity equals psychological safety. And safety is more important to your brain than success. Let's use a real-world example. We've seen this pattern repeatedly with professional athletes and entertainers who grew up in poverty. They achieve massive income almost overnight. Yet within years, many are financially unstable. Not because they lacked opportunity, But because their internal identity didn't evolve with their income, they still feel like the person who had nothing. So they overcompensate, spend aggressively, support entire social circles, upgrade instantly. The income changed. The identity didn't. And when identity stays the same, behavior follows the old script. We've also seen similar patterns with lottery winners. Millions arrive suddenly. Freedom arrives suddenly. But within a few years, many return to financial instability. Because wealth without psychological expansion collapses back to familiarity. Now let's confront something deeper. Some people are afraid of wealth. Not of money. Of wealth. Because wealth changes social dynamics. If you become financially disciplined, you might outgrow your environment. You might outgrow your friend group. You might no longer relate to conversations centered around complaint and survival. Growth can isolate. And isolation feels threatening. We see this often with first-generation wealth builders. People who are the first in their family to accumulate assets. They quietly report tension. Comments like, "You've changed. You think you're better now? Must be nice." So they shrink. Not consciously. Subconsciously. They delay investing. They spend what they could allocate. They justify upgrades. They call it balance. But underneath it is fear of separation. This is rarely discussed. But it's real. Wealth requires a new environment, new conversations, new priorities, new standards. That transition is uncomfortable. And some people would rather stay financially average than socially isolated. Now let's talk about comfort in chaos. Financial instability can become a pattern. You earn. You spend. You tighten up. You recover. You repeat. That cycle becomes predictable. And predictability equals comfort, even if it's stressful. When you try to break that cycle, your brain resists. Because stability feels foreign. Foreign equals risk. Risk equals threat. So you create minor disruptions. Unexpected expenses. Impulse purchases. Delayed investments. Small leaks that return you to baseline. That's financial homeostasis. Your internal thermostat pulls you back to familiar territory, even if familiar is limiting. We even saw this behavior after major economic recoveries. After the 2008 crash and again after pandemic stimulus periods. Many people who temporarily improved their savings quickly returned to pre-crisis spending habits once stability returned. Not because they lacked knowledge. Because their psychological baseline hadn't shifted. This is why mindset matters more than tactics. You can teach someone how to budget, how to invest, how to build assets. But if they are psychologically attached to financial chaos, they will dismantle their own progress. Now let's bring clarity. You are not weak if you've repeated patterns. You are unexamined. Patterns lose power when examined. Let's ask direct questions. Do you feel uncomfortable when your bank account grows? Do you feel pressure to do something with money quickly? Do you feel guilt when you don't spend socially? Do you feel disconnected from friends when you prioritize saving? Do you secretly believe wealth will change you negatively? These questions reveal attachment. An attachment must be confronted. Here's something powerful. Wealth is not just financial expansion. It is psychological expansion. You must expand your comfort zone. Expand your standards. Expand your patience. Expand your tolerance for delayed gratification. If you don't expand internally, you will contract externally. Now let's reframe something. Being broke is not noble. Struggle is not romantic. Chaos is not personality. Financial instability is not depth. Discipline is not boring. It is power. Power without noise. Power without performance. Power without validation. That's what wealth actually is. Let's anchor this chapter with something clear. You cannot build wealth while emotionally loyal to struggle. You cannot build abundance while identifying with scarcity. You cannot build assets while defending chaos. You must choose familiar discomfort or unfamiliar discipline. The next chapter goes deeper into fear, because one of the biggest reasons people stay average financially is fear of investing. Fear of losing, fear of uncertainty, fear of stepping into long-term thinking. And fear is not logical. It's psychological. And we're about to dismantle it. Chapter 5: Why People Fear Investing. Most people say they want wealth. Very few behave like they want volatility. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot build wealth without tolerating uncertainty. Investing is not just financial. It is psychological exposure. When you invest, you confront three things: uncertainty, delay, loss. And the human brain hates all three. Let's start with something simple. If I offered you two options. Option A, gain $1,000 with certainty. Option B, a 50% chance to gain $2,500 and a 50% chance to gain nothing. Many people choose certainty, even when the math favors risk. Why? Because the brain values safety over potential. Now let's reverse it. Option A, lose $1,000 with certainty. Option B, a 50% chance to lose $2,500 and a 50% chance to lose nothing. Most people suddenly choose risk because they want to avoid guaranteed pain. This is called loss aversion. The pain of losing feels psychologically stronger than the pleasure of gaining. That bias controls financial decisions daily. It explains panic selling. It explains avoiding investing entirely. It explains holding onto failing assets too long. Because loss feels personal. Let's talk about the 2008 financial crisis again. Markets crashed. Fear exploded. Headlines screamed. People checked their portfolios daily, watched numbers fall, and many sold at the bottom. Why? Because loss became unbearable emotionally. But here's what happened next. The market recovered. And those who stayed disciplined saw historic gains over the following decade. The S&P 500 more than tripled in the years after the crash. Same environment. Different psychology. The disciplined investor tolerates temporary discomfort. The emotional investor seeks immediate relief. Relief often locks in damage. Let's go deeper. Why does investing feel so threatening? Because it forces you to accept something most people avoid. You are not in control. Markets fluctuate. Returns vary. Timelines stretch. And humans crave certainty. Certainty feels safe. But certainty rarely builds wealth. Safe money often grows slowly. Risk-adjusted money compounds faster. The wealthy understand this. They don't eliminate risk. They manage it. There's a difference. Reckless risk is emotional. Managed risk is structured. Now let's introduce another psychological barrier. Short-term thinking. The brain prioritizes immediate outcomes. If you invest and your portfolio drops 10% in a month, it feels like failure. Even if your long-term trajectory is intact, humans overvalue short-term pain and undervalue long-term growth. That imbalance destroys portfolios. Warren Buffett once said his favorite holding period is forever. And look at his behavior. During market crashes, when fear dominates headlines, he doesn't panic publicly. He evaluates. He waits. He deploys capital strategically. While others sell in fear, he often positions for long-term advantage. That is temperament. But most people can't tolerate watching fluctuation. They want immediate confirmation, immediate validation, immediate reassurance. Investing does not provide that. Investing rewards patience. And patience is emotional discipline. Now let's talk about something subtle. Some people don't invest because they fear looking stupid. If they buy and it drops, they feel incompetent. If they avoid investing and miss gains, they feel regret. So they freeze. Inaction feels safer than visible mistakes. But inaction is also a decision. And over time, inaction is expensive. Cash sitting idle loses purchasing power. Inflation quietly erodes value. Avoiding risk feels safe. Until you calculate long-term impact. Now let's bring in tech founders as an example. In the early days of companies like Amazon and Apple, volatility was extreme. Amazon stock once dropped over 90% during the dot-com crash. 90%. Many investors assumed it was finished. Many sold. But those who understood long-term fundamentals and tolerated volatility saw extraordinary compounding in the decades that followed. Every great investment looks uncertain in the beginning. Certainty appears in hindsight. That's important. People want certainty before committing. But certainty only becomes visible after commitment. So waiting for perfect clarity often means missing opportunity. This doesn't mean reckless action. It means calculated tolerance for uncertainty. Let's talk about FOMO. Fear of missing out. This is the opposite side of fear. Instead of avoiding risk, you chase it. Crypto hype. meme stocks, speculative bubbles, everyone posting gains, everyone celebrating. You feel behind, so you jump in late. Driven by emotion, not research. We saw this clearly during the meme stock surge. Stocks with little fundamental backing skyrocketed because of social momentum. Late entrants bought at emotional highs. When volatility reversed, panic followed. Fear and greed are twins. Both are emotional. Both are dangerous. Wealth requires emotional neutrality. Not fear. Not greed. Just structure. Now here's something confronting. If you cannot handle seeing your portfolio fluctuate, you are not financially ready for growth. That sounds harsh, but it's honest. Volatility is normal. Panic is optional. If you check your investments daily, you increase emotional exposure. The wealthy often check less. They build systems, not emotional reactions. Let's talk about trust. Many people don't invest because they distrust the system, distrust markets, distrust advisors, distrust corporations. Some distrust is healthy. Blind trust is naive. But chronic distrust leads to stagnation. Even after major recoveries like post-2008 or post-pandemic rebounds, many people stayed out of the market entirely because fear lingered. Meanwhile, disciplined investors who re-entered early participated in powerful recoveries. Wealth builders research. They diversify. They calculate. But they still act. Paralysis protects ego. Action builds growth. Now let's confront the core truth. You don't fear investing because of money. You fear investing because of loss. Loss of security. Loss of status. Loss of control. Loss of certainty. But here's the irony. Avoiding investing often guarantees long-term limitation. You trade short-term emotional comfort for long-term opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is invisible. You don't feel what you didn't earn. But over decades, the gap becomes massive. Compounding rewards the patient. It punishes the impulsive, and it ignores the fearful. Now let's shift into solution. How do you reduce fear? Education reduces ignorance. Structure reduces chaos. Diversification reduces exposure. Long-time horizons reduce volatility. But the most important shift: identity. You must become someone who tolerates uncertainty calmly, not recklessly, calmly, because markets fluctuate, but disciplined investors do not. Here's a powerful phrase to anchor this chapter. Volatility tests temperament. Temperament builds wealth. In the next chapter, we confront urgency, because even when people overcome fear, they sabotage wealth through impatience, get-rich-quick thinking, impulse chasing, and the illusion that speed equals success. And that illusion has destroyed more wealth than fear ever could.
Chapter 6. The Trap of Urgency and Impulse. There is a silent enemy of wealth. It doesn't look dangerous, It feels exciting. It feels productive. It feels like momentum. But it destroys more capital than recession ever could. Urgency. Modern culture worships speed. Fast growth, fast money, fast flips, fast success. If something is not happening quickly, people assume it's failing. But wealth does not respond to urgency. It responds to structure. Urgency is emotional. Structure is strategic. And when urgency drives your financial decisions, you stop investing and start gambling. Let's talk about something simple. If someone tells you, this opportunity won't last, your heart rate increases. Your brain narrows focus. You stop evaluating long-term risk. You start calculating short-term gain. Urgency activates survival mode. And survival mode is not logical. It is reactive. Marketers understand this. Investors who lack discipline suffer from it. Countdown timers. Limited offers. Last chance. Don't miss out. These are psychological triggers, not financial analysis. And when you respond emotionally, you enter trades late. You buy hype. You sell fear. You chase momentum. And you repeat the cycle. Let's use real history. The dot-com bubble. Companies with no profit, no stable business models, skyrocketing valuations. Why? Urgency. Everyone else is investing. Everyone else is winning. If you don't move now, you'll miss it. And people did move. Emotionally. Companies with barely functioning websites were valued in the billions simply because they had .com attached to their name. When the bubble burst, trillions in market value disappeared. Same emotion, different direction. Urgency builds bubbles. Patience builds wealth. Now let's examine something subtle. Urgency is not always external. Sometimes it's internal. I'm behind. I started too late. I need to catch up. That internal pressure causes rushed decisions. Over-leveraging, over-trading, overextending. Trying to accelerate compounding unnaturally. We saw this behavior clearly during the housing boom before 2008. People rushed to buy multiple properties with minimal understanding of leverage. Why? Prices will only go up. Everyone is doing it. I'll miss out. Urgency replaced analysis. When the housing market corrected, many were overexposed. Compounding has its own pace. You cannot rush time. If you try, you increase risk exposure. And risk without structure becomes damage. Let's talk about crypto cycles. Every surge brings a new wave of urgency. New investors flood in at peaks. Not because they studied fundamentals, because they felt behind. During major Bitcoin rallies, searches for how to buy crypto spike dramatically, often near market tops. People enter when excitement is highest. Then volatility hits, and emotional investors exit at losses. Fear and urgency work together. Greed pulls you in. Fear pushes you out. Wealth builders operate differently. They position early, or they wait calmly. They don't chase vertical charts. They don't respond to headlines. They rely on frameworks. Urgency is loud. Frameworks are quiet. Now let's go deeper. Why does urgency feel so powerful? Because speed feels like progress, even if direction is wrong. Doing something feels better than doing nothing. But in finance, inaction is often superior to poor action. Let me say that clearly. Sometimes the most profitable move is restraint. Look at Warren Buffett during speculative frenzies. There have been entire market cycles where he deployed very little capital publicly. Critics said he was missing out. But he waited for alignment. When others rushed, he paused. That restraint protected capital. But restraint does not provide adrenaline. And humans crave stimulation. That's why people trade excessively. Check portfolios daily. Shift strategies constantly. They want activity. Activity feels like control. But activity without direction is chaos. The wealthy understand something critical. Most money is lost in unnecessary movement. You don't need to react to every market shift. You don't need to rebalance every fluctuation. You don't need to enter every trend. You need conviction backed by structure. Now let's talk about the illusion of speed. You see someone post, "I made $50,000 this month. I doubled my money. I flipped this investment." It triggers comparison. It triggers urgency. But you rarely see the losses, the failed attempts, the risk exposure. During meme stock rallies, social media was filled with screenshots of massive gains. What wasn't posted? The people who bought late. The people who held through crashes. The people who exited with losses. Survivorship bias is dangerous. You only see the winners. not the thousands who tried and failed. Urgency thrives in incomplete information. Wealth thrives in complete perspective. Now here's something confronting. If you constantly feel behind financially, that feeling is dangerous because it makes you vulnerable to bad decisions. You don't fix feeling behind by rushing.
Chapter 7: Wealth is boring. Here's the truth nobody sells. Wealth is repetitive. It is not dramatic. It is not viral. It is not exciting. It is structured monotony. And most people cannot tolerate monotony long enough to become wealthy. Let me explain. The financial world glorifies excitement, fast trades, big wins, overnight success, explosive growth. But sustainable wealth, it looks like this: automatic investing, monthly contributions, long-term holding, rebalancing quietly, ignoring headlines. That's it. No fireworks, just repetition. And repetition is boring. But boring compounds. Let's look at a real example. Warren Buffett did not build his wealth by trading daily. He didn't flip companies weekly. He didn't chase trends. He bought strong businesses, held them, reinvested profits, waited. For decades, his advantage wasn't brilliance alone. It was endurance. He stayed consistent longer than most people stay interested. That's it. Now contrast that with day traders. Some make quick profits. Some post screenshots. Some go viral. But very few sustain long-term consistency. Because excitement is exhausting. And wealth requires stability. Here's something powerful. The market rewards patience more than intelligence. The investor who contributes steadily for 30 years will often outperform the one who tries to outsmart the market every month. Why? Because compounding does not require genius. It requires time. And time rewards discipline. Let's talk about delayed gratification. When you earn more money, your instinct says, upgrade. When you get a bonus, your instinct says, reward yourself. When you see others winning, your instinct says, catch up. But the wealthy think differently. They ask, does this purchase build assets or just image? Does this decision increase freedom or increase dependency? They delay the visible reward to build invisible power. That feels boring. Driving a modest car when you can afford better. Living below your means when you could stretch. Investing instead of upgrading. No applause. No recognition. Just quiet positioning. But positioning compounds. Let's look at another real-world example. Index fund investors. Millions of ordinary people who consistently invest in broad market funds over decades. No complex strategy. No constant trading. Just steady contributions. Many retire comfortably, not because they outperformed everyone, but because they stayed consistent longer than others stayed disciplined. Wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in ordinary months. And most people underestimate ordinary months. Here's the psychological trap. Humans crave stimulation. We want movement. We want progress to feel intense. But financial progress feels slow, especially in the beginning. The first few years of investing feel small. The numbers don't look impressive. Growth feels invisible. That's where most people quit. But here's the truth about compounding. It starts quietly. Then it accelerates. Then it surprises. But only if you stayed long enough. Most people interrupt compounding before it becomes impressive. They get bored. They shift strategy. They chase something new. They add unnecessary complexity. And complexity destroys consistency. The wealthy simplify. Automate. Repeat. Let's confront something directly. If you cannot tolerate financial boredom, you will sabotage financial growth. Because growth requires stability, and stability feels uneventful. Wealth is not adrenaline. It is alignment. The same behaviors, repeated, long enough to matter. You don't need to be constantly brilliant. You need to be consistently disciplined. That's harder. Because brilliance feels exciting. Discipline feels ordinary. But ordinary actions, repeated for decades, create extraordinary outcomes. Here's the mindset shift. Stop asking, how can I make this faster? Start asking, how can I make this sustainable? Because sustainability builds wealth. Speed builds stories. And stories fade. Assets remain. Wealth is boring. And that is its power. Because boring habits are predictable. Predictable habits are stable. Stable habits compound. And compounding is the quiet engine behind every long-term fortune. If you want wealth, fall in love with repetition. Fall in love with structure. Fall in love with doing the same intelligent thing, over and over, even when it feels unimpressive. Because unimpressive habits, repeated consistently, become unstoppable. Chapter 8. Patience as a Financial Weapon. Patience is not passive. It is controlled power. Most people misunderstand patience. They think it means waiting and doing nothing. But in finance, patience means staying aligned when others panic. It means holding position when headlines scream. It means trusting structure when emotion tries to interfere. And that is rare. Because humans are wired for immediacy. We want results quickly. We want confirmation now. We want growth visible. But wealth responds to time, not urgency. Let's go back to 2008. The financial crisis. Markets collapsed. Fear dominated every news channel. People watched retirement accounts drop 30%, 40%, 50%. And many sold. Not because they analyzed fundamentals. Because they felt pain. But here's what happened next. Over the following decade, the market didn't just recover. It expanded dramatically. Those who stayed invested, and continued investing during the downturn, multiplied their wealth. Same crisis. Different patience levels. Short-term thinkers saw catastrophe. Long-term thinkers saw discounted opportunity. That's what patience does. It changes interpretation. Now let's look at another example. Amazon. In the early 2000s, after the dot-com crash, Amazon stock dropped more than 90%. 90%. Most investors assumed the company was finished. Short-term patience ended. But those who believed in the long-term model and tolerated volatility experienced exponential returns in the years that followed. It wasn't obvious at the time. That's the key. Patience never feels obvious. It feels uncertain. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like you might be wrong. But time rewards those who can endure uncertainty without reacting impulsively. Here's something powerful. Your time horizon determines your emotional stability. If your horizon is 1 month, every fluctuation feels threatening. If your horizon is 10 years, volatility feels temporary. The shorter your horizon, the louder the noise. The longer your horizon, the calmer your mind. That's why wealthy investors think in decades, not weeks. Warren Buffett once described the stock market as a mechanism that transfers money from the impatient to the patient. That is not a motivational quote. It is a psychological observation. Impatience forces decisions. Patience filters them. Now let's talk about another real-world pattern. After the 2020 market crash during the pandemic, many investors panic-sold again. Uncertainty was extreme. But within months, markets began recovering. And those who stayed disciplined participated in one of the fastest recoveries in modern history. The pattern repeats. Crash. Fear. Selling. Recovery. Regret. Patience protects against regret. Impatience manufactures it. Now let's zoom out. Patience is not just about market crashes. It's about compounding. Compounding is slow at first. Painfully slow. The first 5 years of investing often feel underwhelming. The growth looks small. The numbers don't impress anyone. But around year 15, 20, 25, acceleration begins. And people call it luck. It wasn't luck. It was patience. The problem is this. Most people want year 20 results in year 3 effort. That mindset creates vulnerability. Vulnerability to hype. Vulnerability to urgency. Vulnerability to abandoning good strategies too early. Patience requires emotional maturity. Because while you're waiting, others may appear to be winning faster. Others may show bigger gains. Others may move louder. But wealth is not built by competing in noise. It is built by staying aligned with structure. Now let's examine something subtle. Patience also protects against overreaction during success. When markets are booming. When profits are rising. When everything looks easy. That is when impatience whispers. Double down. Leverage more. Take bigger risks. But patience says, stay disciplined. Stay diversified. Stay structured. In both downturns and upswings, patience stabilizes behavior. It keeps you from panicking in fear. And from overextending in greed. That balance is powerful, because volatility is temporary. But emotional mistakes can be permanent. Here's the deeper truth. Patience is a competitive advantage. Because most people don't have it. Most people quit good strategies too early. Most people interrupt compounding before it becomes meaningful. Most people demand proof before progress matures. But financial systems reward those who endure. Time is not neutral. Time amplifies behavior. If your behavior is disciplined, time multiplies it. If your behavior is impulsive, time exposes it. So patience is not waiting. It is trusting process. It is resisting emotional interference. It is understanding cycles. It is thinking in decades. And when you think in decades, you stop reacting to days. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, "How fast can this grow?" ask, "Can I hold this for 10 years calmly?" Because if you can't hold it calmly, it's not aligned with your psychology, and wealth requires psychological alignment. Patience is not weakness. It is restraint. It is strength under uncertainty. It is emotional endurance. And in finance, emotional endurance wins. Because markets will fluctuate. Headlines will scare. Hype will tempt, but the patient investor doesn't move with noise. They move with principle. And principle, repeated long enough, becomes wealth. Chapter 9. Emotional control equals financial control. Money does not test your intelligence. It tests your temperament. You can understand investing. You can understand budgeting. You can understand compounding. And still sabotage everything. Because you could not control your emotions. Emotional control is the invisible foundation of wealth. Without it, strategy collapses under pressure. Let's start with something simple. When markets rise rapidly, people feel confident. When markets fall rapidly, people feel afraid. The math hasn't changed overnight. But emotion has. And emotion changes behavior. Now let's look at a real-world example. The 2020 pandemic crash. Markets dropped at historic speed. News cycles amplified fear. Investors watched portfolios decline rapidly. Many panic sold. They moved to cash to feel safe. But within months, markets began one of the fastest recoveries in history. Those who reacted emotionally locked in losses. Those who remained disciplined participated in recovery. Same event. Different emotional control. The calm investor preserved opportunity. The reactive investor preserved anxiety. Now let's look at the opposite scenario. Bull markets. When everything is rising. When gains feel easy. When confidence grows. That is when emotional control is tested again. During crypto surges and meme stock rallies, many investors increased risk dramatically. Not because fundamentals improved. Because emotion intensified. Greed replaced analysis. Overconfidence replaced structure. When volatility returned, so did regret. Emotional excess in good times creates instability in bad times. This is not just about markets. It applies to income. Some entrepreneurs experience a few strong months. Revenue increases. Confidence spikes. They upgrade lifestyle. Increase fixed expenses. Expand prematurely. Then a slow quarter arrives. Panic sets in. Why? Because emotional highs dictated financial decisions. Reactive earners scale emotionally. Disciplined earners scale structurally. They build reserves during growth. They prepare for volatility. They don't assume good months are permanent. Let's bring in another powerful example. Professional athletes who earn millions early in their careers. The income surge is dramatic, emotionally overwhelming. Without emotional discipline, spending accelerates just as fast. Homes, cars, entourage, status purchases. But careers can be short. Income can drop suddenly. And without emotional control, financial collapse follows. It wasn't a math issue. It was a behavioral issue. Now contrast that with long-term disciplined investors. Warren Buffett again becomes relevant here. During crises, he does not rush to make emotional statements. He does not liquidate positions out of fear. He evaluates. He waits. He acts strategically. He once said the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. But underneath that statement is something deeper. It transfers money from the emotionally reactive to the emotionally stable. Emotional control creates consistency. Consistency builds compounding. Now let's go deeper. Why do people struggle with emotional control financially? Because money is tied to identity. It represents security, status, freedom, power, validation. So when money fluctuates, identity feels threatened. That's why market drops feel personal. That's why income instability feels destabilizing. That's why comparison triggers urgency. If your identity is fragile, your financial behavior will be unstable. If your identity is stable, volatility becomes tolerable. Here's the powerful shift. Emotional control is not suppression. It is regulation. You will feel fear. You will feel greed. You will feel urgency. But disciplined individuals do not let feelings dictate action. They create space between emotion and execution. They pause. They evaluate. They follow structure. That pause is everything. Most financial damage happens in moments of emotional intensity. Selling at the bottom. Buying at the top. Over-leveraging during excitement. Freezing during opportunity. All emotional. Let's talk about long-term investors who survived multiple crashes. 2000, dot-com crash. 2008, financial crisis. 2020, pandemic crash. Those who remained invested through all three events didn't possess supernatural intelligence. They possessed emotional endurance. They understood cycles. They trusted time. They controlled reaction. And time rewarded them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you check your portfolio obsessively, you increase emotional volatility. If you compare income constantly, you increase psychological pressure. If you make decisions while emotional, you decrease financial stability. Wealth is less about maximizing returns and more about minimizing emotional mistakes. That's rarely discussed. Avoid catastrophic emotional errors, and average discipline becomes powerful. Now imagine two investors. Investor A checks daily, reacts to headlines, moves frequently, panics during drops, overextends during rises. Investor B checks periodically, follows structure, rebalances calmly, accepts volatility, thinks in decades. Over 20 years, who wins? Almost always the calm one, because volatility punishes reaction, but rewards endurance. Emotional control equals financial control. Control your reaction, and you control your trajectory. You cannot control markets. You cannot control economic cycles. You cannot control inflation. But you can control behavior. And behavior compounds. Here's the identity shift. Become the person who does not panic. Become the person who does not chase. Become the person who does not overspend during excitement. Become the person who does not freeze during fear. That is financial maturity. And maturity builds stability. Stability builds wealth. Wealth is not built by intensity. It is built by emotional steadiness. And emotional steadiness is rare. That's why wealth is rare. In the next chapter, we shift from discipline to design. Because emotional control is powerful, but systems make it sustainable. We now move into designing your financial operating system. And this is where structure becomes automatic. Chapter 10. Designing your financial operating system. If your financial life depends on motivation, it will collapse under pressure. Motivation fluctuates. Mood changes. Discipline weakens. Stress interferes. But systems do not feel. Systems execute. And wealthy individuals understand something simple. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. A financial operating system is simple. It answers 3 questions. Where does my money go automatically? How are decisions filtered? What happens when emotion rises? Because emotion will rise. And when it does, the system must take over. Let's start with automation. One of the most powerful wealth-building tools in modern history is automatic investing. Not genius stock picking. Not constant trading. Automation. Millions of long-term investors use automatic monthly contributions into retirement accounts or index funds. They invest whether markets are up. They invest whether markets are down. They invest whether headlines are optimistic or terrifying. And over decades, that repetition compounds dramatically. During the 2008 crash and the 2020 crash, automated investors continued buying, not because they were fearless, but because their system didn't ask for permission. That is powerful. The system removed emotion from execution. Now contrast that with someone who invests manually. Every month becomes a debate. Is this the right time? Should I wait? What if it drops further? Analysis paralysis replaces consistency, and inconsistency interrupts compounding. Automation protects you from hesitation. Next, structure. A financial operating system divides income intentionally. For example, fixed expenses, variable spending, investments, emergency reserves, predefined percentages, not random decisions. Wealthy individuals rarely treat income as one flexible pool. They assign it roles. Role-based allocation creates stability. Let's look at a real-world example. Many high-earning professionals fail financially not because they earn too little, but because they lack structure. Large income. No allocation plan. Lifestyle expands to match earnings. Savings become optional. Investments become irregular. But individuals who assign percentages before spending, for example, automatically investing 20% or 30% of income before lifestyle decisions, build assets consistently regardless of income size. Structure protects growth. Now let's talk about decision filters. This is where the financial operating system becomes powerful. Before major purchases, wealthy individuals often use invisible filters. Does this increase assets or liabilities? Does this align with long-term goals? Will this decision increase freedom or increase dependency? Those questions slow impulse. They introduce friction. Friction is protective. Let's bring in a real example. During tech booms, many professionals receive stock compensation. Some immediately sell and spend. Others hold without diversification. But disciplined individuals apply decision filters. What percentage should I hold? What percentage should I diversify? What aligns with long-term risk management? The filter removes ego from the decision, because ego is dangerous in finance. Now let's address something uncomfortable. Willpower is unreliable. You cannot rely on feeling disciplined forever. That's why systems matter. Consider business owners who automatically separate tax money into a different account. They don't hope they'll have enough when taxes are due. They structure for it. Contrast that with someone who mixes all income into one account, spends freely, then panics during tax season. Same income, different system. One produces calm. The other produces chaos. Your financial operating system should also include volatility preparation, emergency reserves, liquidity buffers, insurance coverage. Because unexpected events are not rare. They are inevitable. Look at 2020. Businesses without cash reserves collapsed quickly. Businesses with liquidity survived long enough to recover. Same environment, different preparation. Systems create resilience. Now here's something powerful. A financial operating system reduces decision fatigue. The more decisions you make daily about money, the more emotional vulnerability you create. But when investments are automated, allocations are predefined, filters are clear, you remove unnecessary decision-making. Clarity reduces stress. Stress reduction improves discipline. Discipline builds wealth. Let's zoom out. Wealth is not built by dramatic financial moves. It is built by predictable execution. And predictability requires system design. Imagine two individuals. Person A earns well, invests inconsistently, spends emotionally, adjusts strategy frequently. Person B earns moderately, invests automatically, allocates intentionally, reviews periodically. Over 20 years, who builds more stability? Usually Person B, because systems outperform bursts of intensity. Here's the deeper shift. Stop asking, how can I make more money? Start asking, how can I make my financial behavior predictable? Predictability compounds. Emotion disrupts. Your financial operating system is your shield. It protects you from fear in downturns, greed in booms, impulse in stress, ego in success. And once your system is strong, your emotions become less dangerous. This is where wealth transitions from effort to architecture, and architecture outlasts motivation. In the next chapter, we confront something even more confronting: the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Because the world celebrates one, but only one creates freedom. Chapter 11. The difference between rich and wealthy. Rich is loud. Wealthy is quiet. Rich is visible. Wealth is structured. And confusing the two has financially destroyed more people than lack of income ever could. Let's define it clearly. Rich is high income. Wealthy is high ownership. Rich is cash flow. Wealth is assets. Rich can disappear quickly. Wealth is built to endure. You can earn $500,000 a year and be financially fragile. You can earn $80,000 a year and be financially stable. The difference is not income. It's architecture. Let's look at real life. We've seen celebrities, entertainers, and professional athletes earn tens of millions of dollars and later declare bankruptcy. How is that possible? Because income without asset preservation is temporary. Homes, cars, jewelry, lifestyle upgrades, those are not wealth. They are consumption. Now contrast that with long-term investors who quietly accumulate equity in businesses, index funds, real estate, or private ventures. They may not appear flashy. They may not signal success publicly, but their net worth grows structurally. One builds image. The other builds insulation. That's the difference. Now let's bring in a powerful example. During the 2008 financial crisis, many individuals who appeared rich, large homes, luxury cars, leveraged lifestyles, were financially exposed. When credit tightened and income slowed, fragility was revealed. But individuals with diversified assets, cash reserves, and manageable liabilities remained stable. The crisis did not create fragility. It exposed it. Rich often relies on continuous income. Wealthy relies on accumulated assets. If income stops tomorrow, the rich may struggle. If income stops tomorrow, the wealthy have margin. Margin is freedom. Now let's examine psychology. Rich seeks validation. Wealth seeks autonomy. Rich often asks, "How do I look successful?" Wealth asks, "How do I become secure?" Rich measures status externally. Wealth measures leverage internally. Let's take another real-world contrast. There are business owners who reinvest profits into expanding assets, acquiring equity, increasing ownership, diversifying investments. And there are high earners who increase lifestyle with every raise. The first compounds. The second stabilizes at consumption level. Income rises. Expenses rise. Net position stagnates. It looks impressive, but it's fragile. Here's something powerful. Rich people often upgrade immediately. Wealthy people upgrade after insulation. That insulation might be emergency reserves, diversified investments, low debt ratios, cash flow producing assets. The wealthy delay lifestyle expansion until the foundation is secure. Now consider long-term investors who quietly accumulated shares in companies like Apple, Microsoft, or broad index funds over decades. They didn't need to signal wealth. Their assets appreciated. Their ownership expanded. Their leverage increased. And because they focused on assets instead of appearance, their wealth became self-reinforcing. Meanwhile, others focused on signaling income, which required continuous earning to sustain. Let's confront something uncomfortable. Many people want to feel rich. Few are willing to build wealth. Feeling rich is immediate. Building wealth is delayed. Feeling rich is social. Building wealth is structural. Feeling rich requires spending. Building wealth requires restraint. And restraint rarely receives applause. Now here's the deeper shift. Rich is about what you earn. Wealth is about what you keep and grow. Rich is often dependent. Wealth creates independence. Rich can be impressive. Wealth is durable. Let me say something clearly. The goal is not to look financially powerful. The goal is to become financially unshakable. And that requires prioritizing ownership over optics, assets over applause, cash flow over compliments. The wealthy think in terms of net worth, asset allocation, risk management, long-term durability. The rich often think in terms of income, upgrades, status symbols, external perception. One builds freedom. The other builds performance. Now imagine two individuals. Person A earns extremely well, upgrades lifestyle quickly, maintains little liquidity, has minimal diversified assets. Person B earns moderately, invests consistently, keeps expenses controlled, builds equity over decades. In 10 years, Person A may look richer. In 20 years, Person B may be wealthier. In 30 years, Person B likely has freedom. Freedom is the true metric. Because wealth is not about excess. It is about optionality. The ability to say no. The ability to walk away. The ability to wait. The ability to choose. And that does not come from high income alone. It comes from accumulated ownership. So here's the question that defines your trajectory. Are you building a lifestyle? Or are you building leverage? Because one requires constant maintenance. The other compounds silently. In the final chapter, we move beyond strategy, beyond discipline, beyond structure. We talk about identity, because wealth is not sustained by tactics. It is sustained by who you become. And becoming financially unshakable is not a financial shift. It is a psychological one. Chapter 12. Becoming financially unshakable. At some point, this stops being about money. It becomes about identity. Because money fluctuates. Markets fluctuate. Income fluctuates. Opportunities fluctuate. But if your identity fluctuates with them, you will never feel secure. Becoming financially unshakable is not about eliminating volatility. It's about eliminating emotional instability. Let's define it clearly. A financially unshakable person does not panic in downturns, does not overspend in upswings, does not chase hype, does not freeze in fear, does not collapse under comparison. They operate from structure, and structure is anchored in identity. Let's look at real life. There are investors who have lived through the dot-com crash in 2000, the housing crash in 2008, the pandemic crash in 2020. 3 major global shocks. Some investors exited permanently after the first crash. Some exited after the second. But those who stayed disciplined through all 3 cycles, who continued investing, continued allocating, continued thinking long-term, saw extraordinary long-term compounding. Not because they predicted perfectly, but because they remained stable. Markets recovered. Cycles turned. Time rewarded steadiness. The unshakable investor doesn't assume crashes won't happen. They expect them. They build for them. They survive them. And survival compounds. Now let's step outside investing. Consider long-term business builders. During economic contractions, some businesses collapse under pressure. Others adapt. They have liquidity. They have margin. They have conservative leverage. They don't expand recklessly during booms. So they don't implode during downturns. That is unshakable architecture. The goal is not to avoid storms. It is to become structurally prepared for them. Because storms are inevitable. Let's go deeper. Financially unshakable people separate identity from net worth. If their portfolio drops 20%, they don't feel 20% less worthy. If income slows, they don't feel personally diminished. They understand cycles. They understand volatility. They understand that temporary contraction does not define long-term direction. That emotional separation is power. Because many people tie self-worth directly to financial performance. When numbers rise, they feel confident. When numbers fall, they feel anxious. That instability creates destructive decisions. Now let's bring in a real example of contrast. During the 2008 crisis, some executives and investors who were heavily over-leveraged, emotionally and financially, collapsed under pressure. Excessive debt. Overconfidence during expansion. No margin. When contraction came, fragility was exposed. But others who maintained diversified assets, conservative leverage, and disciplined reserves endured. Same market, different internal stability. The difference wasn't access to information. It was temperament and preparation. Becoming unshakable means you build margin into your life. Financial margin, emotional margin, decision margin. You don't operate at maximum stretch. You don't rely on perfect conditions. You don't assume constant growth. You build resilience. Here's what that looks like. You invest with a long horizon. You diversify intelligently. You keep liquidity. You avoid ego-driven leverage. You automate structure. You accept that volatility is normal, and you detach emotion from temporary numbers. That detachment is maturity. Now let's talk about freedom. True financial freedom is not having the biggest house. It's not displaying luxury. It's not constant upgrades. It's optionality. The ability to leave a toxic environment, take time off without panic, invest without fear, wait without pressure, say no without insecurity. That freedom is built slowly, and it is protected fiercely. Here's something powerful. Many people want high income. Few want high responsibility. Because becoming unshakable requires self-control. It requires long-term thinking in a short-term culture. It requires resisting comparison in a visibility-driven world. It requires delaying gratification repeatedly. And that is not glamorous. But it is transformative. Let's confront the final truth. Wealth is not built by what you earn. It is built by who you become. You become patient. You become disciplined. You become emotionally stable. You become structured. You become long-term oriented. And once those traits stabilize, your finances stabilize. Money amplifies identity. If your identity is reactive, money magnifies chaos. If your identity is disciplined, money magnifies structure. So becoming financially unshakable is not about chasing returns. It is about building character. Character that does not panic. Character that does not chase. Character that does not overextend. Character that understands time. Time is the ultimate multiplier. And time rewards stability. Here is the final shift. Stop trying to win the year. Start trying to win the decade. Stop trying to impress the moment. Start trying to secure the future. Stop reacting to noise. Start operating from principle. Because wealth is not dramatic. It is deliberate. It is patient. It is structured. It is resilient. And in the end, wealth is not built by what you earn. It's built by who you become. The quiet power of financial mastery. If you've made it this far, you already understand something most people never will. Money was never the real subject. You were. Your patterns. Your impulses. Your fears. Your patience. Your discipline. Because money doesn't respond to intelligence alone. It responds to behavior. And behavior is identity. You don't build wealth by chasing numbers. You build wealth by becoming stable enough to handle them. You don't lose money because you lack information. You lose money because you lack emotional control. You don't stay average because you lack opportunity. You stay average because impatience interrupts compounding. Now pause for a moment. Think about who you were before this started. Think about how you reacted to volatility, to income shifts, to comparison, to urgency, to fear. And now think about the shift. You understand that wealth is boring. Patience is leverage. Emotional control is power. Structure beats motivation. Ownership beats optics. You understand that money amplifies identity. And that is the real edge. Here's the quiet truth. Most people will hear this. Few will apply it. Because application requires restraint. It requires saying no when others are saying yes. It requires staying calm when others are reacting. It requires staying invested when others are panicking. It requires ignoring applause. It requires enduring boredom. And boredom is uncomfortable in a culture addicted to speed. But speed builds stories. Time builds wealth. Years from now, the headlines will change. New bubbles will form. New crashes will happen. New hype cycles will tempt. And the emotionally reactive will repeat the same mistakes. But if you internalize this, you will not move with noise. You will move with principle. And principle compounds. Here's something powerful. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need perfect picks. You don't need constant brilliance. You need consistency, patience, emotional regulation, systems, time. That's it. Those 5 qualities outperform excitement. Every time. You now understand that being rich is different from being wealthy. That urgency is dangerous. That compounding is slow, until it isn't. That identity determines outcome. That financial stability is psychological before it is numerical. So here's the final question. Who are you becoming? Not how much are you earning. Not what are you buying. Not what are you posting. Who are you becoming? Because wealth follows identity. If you become disciplined, money stabilizes. If you become patient, time rewards you. If you become emotionally steady, volatility stops scaring you. And when volatility stops scaring you, you gain control. Control over decisions. Control over pace. Control over risk. Control over your future. That is freedom. And freedom is quiet. It doesn't need to be displayed. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It is internal. And once it becomes internal, no crash can take it from you. No downturn can shake it. No comparison can disturb it. That is financial mastery. Not flashy. Not loud. Unshakable. Now here's why this matters. The world will keep accelerating. Speed will keep increasing. Noise will get louder. Opportunities will look urgent. Fear will look convincing. And the temptation to react will never disappear. So you don't just listen to this once. You return to it, not for motivation, for recalibration, because recalibration keeps identity aligned, and identity keeps wealth stable. Replay this when markets drop, income rises, fear spikes, greed whispers, comparison tempts, because repetition reinforces discipline, and discipline builds freedom. You are not here to chase quick wins. You are here to build durable wealth. Not dramatic, durable. And durable wealth is built by durable character. Remember this. Wealth is not built by what you earn. It's built by who you become. So become unshakable, and let time do the rest. If this message spoke to you, share it. Subscribe. Keep listening. This is Beyond the Noise Studio.